The Malthari scout vessel Veil of Dawn drifted through the violet, tinged void, its bioluminescent hull panels pulsing softly as it skimmed the edge of contested space. The ship was a whisper in the dark, a sleek crystalline construct of flowing silver alloy and translucent aerogel, its contours shaped by forgotten stellar winds. Commander Malvar stood at the central observation spire, his four-fingered hands resting on the smooth organic console. His violet eyes, slit, pupilled, and sharp, scanned the holographic displays that shimmered in the air before him. Something was wrong. The anomaly had appeared without warning. A flicker of energy on the long-range scanners, too structured to be cosmic debris, too quiet to be a warship. It pulsed once, twice, then settled into a steady, almost mocking rhythm. Thelolan, the ship's lead scientist, leaned forward, her crest of bioluminescent filaments flaring in unease. "Commander," she murmured, her voice a harmonic whisper. "The signature matches Terran stealth technology, but it's broadcasting no weapon signatures, no drive emissions, just a cloak array. Alone." Malvar's secondary eyelids flicked sideways in a reflexive gesture of disbelief. The Terrans did not deploy single systems. They did not leave their technology unattended. Their doctrine was overwhelming redundancy, layers upon layers of deception and firepower. A lone cloak array, drifting in the void like discarded chaff, was an impossibility. Yet there it was. The crew exchanged uneasy glances. The Malthari had fought beside humans before, had seen their warships tear through enemy lines like living storms, their railguns singing in the dark. They had also seen what happened when those same humans were cornered. The Battle of Carxi still haunted Malvar's dreams, the way the Terran Peacekeepers had turned a rout into a slaughter, their retreating vessels suddenly pivoting to unleash hellfire from what should have been crippled husks. "A trap?" one of the junior officers suggested, his voice tight. Thelolan's fingers danced across the console, coaxing more data from the scanners. "If it is, it's unlike anything in their known tactics. No decoys, no hidden signatures. Just this." Malvar exhaled slowly, his breath stirring the faint ionization haze that clung to the bridge. The prudent choice was clear: withdraw, report, let the High Command decide. But curiosity was a claw in his chest. The Terrans did nothing without reason. If they had left a cloak array here, unguarded, then there was a message in its silence. "Bring us closer," he ordered. The Veil of Dawn glided forward, its organic thrusters emitting barely a ripple in the fabric of space. As they neared, the scanners resolved the object in full, a matte black hexagon, its edges too precise, its surface swallowing light rather than reflecting it. No markings, no identifiers, just a silent waiting thing. Then, as if acknowledging their presence, the array pulsed once more, a single burst of encrypted data. Thelolan's breath caught. "It's a recording." Malvar's blood ran cold, because now he remembered the humans never left their dead behind. Malvar remembered the first time he had seen a Terran warship. It had been decades ago, during the siege of Kethvar, when the Malthari Dominion still dismissed humanity as reckless upstarts. A young species, barely out of their cradle, their ships crude and their tactics blunt. The High Command had scoffed at their so-called peacekeeping interventions, their insistence on inserting themselves into wars they had no stake in. Let them burn themselves out, the admirals had said. They will learn their place. Then came the Battle of the Broken Crescent. A Malthari fleet had been locked in a brutal stalemate with the Cathari separatists, their crystalline warships exchanging volleys of ionized plasma across the ruins of a dead star system. The humans had arrived unannounced, a single vessel, sleek and black, its hull devoid of ornamentation. No grand declaration, no hails, just silence. The Cathari had fired first. Malvar, then a junior officer, had watched the engagement from the bridge of the Veil of Dawn's predecessor. The Terran ship, designated Soul's Shadow, had not evaded. It had not raised shields. It had simply let the Cathari scan it, let their targeting arrays paint its silhouette in perfect detail. Then it had moved. In the span of a single breath, the shadow had flickered, not with the graceful, flowing kinetics of Malthari drives, but with something jagged, unnatural. It ripped across the battlefield, its engines leaving scars in the fabric of space itself. The Cathari targeting systems, so confident a moment before, screamed in sudden, panicked distortion, and then the Terran ship was among them. It did not fire. It did not need to. The Cathari vessels simply unraveled. Their elegant, wind-carved hulls split along invisible seams, their bioluminescent cores guttering like dying stars. No explosions, no debris, just silent, surgical annihilation. Within minutes, the Separatist fleet was gone. The shadow had lingered only long enough to transmit a single message to the Malthari fleet. Cease hostilities. This system is under Terran protection. Then it vanished, leaving behind only the echo of its passage and the creeping realization that the humans had allowed themselves to be seen, that they had wanted the Cathari to scan them, to lock on, to believe they were vulnerable. Because the first rule of Terran warfare was simple: let your enemy see exactly what you want them to see. Now, decades later, Malvar stood on the bridge of the Veil of Dawn, staring at the silent cloak array before them. Its matte surface drank the light, its edges too sharp, too deliberate. Just like the shadow, Thelolan's voice was hushed. "Captain, the recording. It's not a distress signal." Malvar already knew. The humans never left their dead behind, but they did leave warnings. The Malthari bridge hummed with restrained tension, the air thick with the scent of ionized ozone and the faint, metallic tang of fear. The Veil of Dawn hovered before the Terran cloak array, its crystalline hull reflecting the distant starlight in fractured violet hues. The array itself was an anomaly, its design outdated by at least 3 galactic cycles, its silhouette boxy and utilitarian compared to the flowing organic curves of Malthari architecture. Yet the power readings flickering across Thelolan's console told a different story. Impossible. The array's energy signature pulsed in erratic, jagged spikes, as if the vessel were breathing, inhaling and exhaling power in a rhythm no known reactor should sustain. Thelolan's fingers trembled as he adjusted the sensors, recalibrating them again and again, as though sheer repetition might force the data to make sense. "Captain," he murmured, his voice barely audible over the ambient hum of the ship. "The energy output, it matches the readings from the shadow." Malvar's crest of crystalline spines stiffened. He had seen the reports, the after-action logs from the Cathari purge. The shadow had been a ghost, a specter that slipped between the stars with terrifying ease, its power signature fluctuating in ways that defied Malthari physics. And now, here it was again, traced in the heartbeat of this relic. A chime echoed through the bridge. The Terran array was hailing them. Malvar exhaled slowly, his claws flexing against the command console. Protocol demanded caution. The last time a Malthari ship had answered an unsolicited Terran transmission, the conversation had ended with a Separatist fleet reduced to molten slag. He opened the channel, static hissed, then resolved into a voice, human, female, unnervingly calm. "Malthari vessel Veil of Dawn. This is Colonel Janet Coombs of the Terran Peacekeeping Corps. We've been expecting you." The words sent a ripple of unease through the bridge. The Dawn had been running silent, its own cloaking systems active, its trajectory randomized to avoid detection, yet the humans had known. Malvar forced his spines to relax, adopting the measured cadence of diplomacy. "Colonel Coombs, this is Captain Malvar of the Malthari Sovereign Fleet. We detected your array. Your signal was unclear." A pause, then a soft chuckle. "Oh, I doubt that." Thelolan stiffened. The colonel's tone was light, almost amused, but beneath it lurked something else. A razor's edge of knowing. "You scanned us the moment you dropped out of warp," Coombs continued. "Just like we knew you would. So let's skip the posturing. You're here because you want answers, and we're happy to provide them." Another chime, A data packet flickered across the comms display, an invitation. Boarding coordinates, a formal request for cultural exchange. Thelolan's claws tapped nervously against his console. Captain, this is a trap, Malvar finished, his voice low. Perhaps. But the array's power readings still taunted him. Outdated hull, bleeding, edge energy signatures, a relic that shouldn't exist. Just like the shadow, humans never left their dead behind, but they did leave lessons. Malvar made his decision. Prepare a shuttle, he ordered, and arm the Dawn's contingency protocols. If this was a trap, he would walk into it with his eyes open, and if it wasn't, then the galaxy was about to learn why the Terrans only ever needed one cloak array. Section Fe. The offering the shuttle bay of the Indomitable's cloak array hummed with an eerie organic resonance. Not the sterile precision of Malthari engineering, but something older, wilder. The walls pulsed with bioluminescent veins, their purple-white glow flickering like a slow heartbeat. Malvar stepped onto the deck, his boots sinking slightly into the living alloy. Another human innovation, self-repairing and adaptive. The air tasted of ozone and something metallic, like blood after a storm. A single figure waited for them. Colonel Janet Coombs stood with the relaxed posture of someone who had long since stopped caring about first impressions. Her uniform was worn at the edges, the fabric frayed where rank insignia had been torn off and reattached too many times. A scar bisected her left eyebrow, pale against sun, leathered skin. She wasn't armed. That more than anything unsettled Malvar. "Welcome," she said, voice rough. "We don't get visitors often." Thelolan's crest flared in unease. The humans had sent no guards, no escort, just this woman, standing alone in the cavernous bay. A power play, surely. Yet the way she watched them wasn't predatory. It was weary. "You expected us," Malvar said. Coombs exhaled, almost a laugh. "We expected someone." She turned, gesturing for them to follow. "Come on, we've got something to show you." The corridor beyond was lined with holographic projectors, dormant for now. Their crystalline surfaces shimmered with latent energy, the same aurora hues as Malthari tech. But where the aliens' designs flowed like wind-carved dunes, these were jagged, deliberate, built to last. "You're wondering why we only sent one array," Coombs said as they walked. "The thought had occurred," Malvar admitted. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she led them into a chamber at the heart of the array, a domed space, its ceiling, a lattice of interwoven energy conduits. At its center, a holographic emitter pulsed softly. "We used to send fleets," Coombs said at last. Her fingers danced across a control panel, and the room darkened. The emitter flared to life. Images bloomed in the air, ships, thousands of them, their silhouettes unmistakably human. Dreadnoughts bristling with cannons, carriers disgorging swarms of fighters, a war machine vast enough to blot out stars. Then, the projection shifted, showing planets cracked like eggshells, cities reduced to glass. The fleet burned, torn apart by weapons Malvar didn't recognize, twisting beams of black light, gravity distortions that shredded hulls like paper. The first diaspora war. Coombs murmured, "We lost 3 systems before we realized we were fighting the wrong battle." Another shift. The devastation faded, replaced by new images. Humans standing alongside aliens. Not as conquerors, as equals. Medics. "So we stopped sending fleets," Coombs said. "Started sending this instead." The projection dissolved into schematics. The array's own design, not a warship, a relay. Thelolan's breath hitched. This is a cultural archive." Coombs nodded. "Every extinct civilization we've ever known. Every mistake we've made. Every war we couldn't stop." She met Malvar's gaze. "We send one array because one is enough. The lesson's the same, no matter who's listening." Malvar's spines prickled. He had expected a trap, a weapon, Not this, not an offering. Coombs smiled, thin and tired. So, still think we're the monsters. Outside, the array hummed, its energy flowing like a quiet river. Waiting, Malvar had no answer. Thelolan's fingers trembled as they ghosted over the crystalline interface of the human array. The Malthari scientist had waited until the others were distracted, until Malvar's spines had settled into wary contemplation, and the human commander had turned to speak with her subordinate. Now, under the pretense of studying the projections, flickering data streams, Thelolan's true work began. The array's surface was cool beneath their touch, its material neither metal nor mineral, but something in between, a composite that seemed to breathe, its veins pulsing with faint purple, white luminescence. Thelolan's own scanner, a slender Malthari diagnostic rod, slithered from their sleeve, its tip glowing as it sought purchase in the array's systems. At first, the scan returned nothing. The array's architecture was a labyrinth of encryption, its protocols written in a language that defied translation. Thelolan's crest flared in frustration, until, with a sudden, almost reluctant shudder, the array yielded. Data flooded their mind, not just schematics, not just technical readouts. The array was alive with knowledge, centuries, no, millennia, beyond Malthari comprehension. Its energy signature wasn't merely efficient, it was impossible. The power core wasn't a reactor at all, but a singularity contained within a lattice of exotic matter, humming at the edge of reality itself. Thelolan's breath caught. This wasn't technology, this was heresy. The array allowed the intrusion, almost encouraged it. Thelolan's scanner flickered, its readings spiraling into chaos as it tried to reconcile the physics, defying truth before them. The energy wasn't being generated, it was being borrowed, pulled from somewhere else, somewhere other, with a precision that bordered on sentience. A shadow fell across the interface. Thelolan jerked back, their scanner retracting with a guilty snap. Colonel Coombs stood there, arms crossed, her expression unreadable. For a heartbeat, Thelolan braced for reprimand, for the cold fury of a military officer whose secrets had been violated. Instead, Coombs smiled. "You're asking the wrong questions," she said, her voice low. Thelolan's spines bristled. This power source, it shouldn't exist. Coombs chuckled, a dry, weary sound. Neither should we by most galactic standards. She tapped the array's surface, and the schematics shifted again. This time, to a star map littered with markers, dead worlds, lost civilizations. Every species that's ever wiped itself out did it the same way. They assumed they knew how the universe worked. Then they broke it trying to prove they were right. Thelolan stared at the map, their mind reeling. The humans hadn't just surpassed the Malthari technologically, they had outlived them, not in years, but in lessons. Coombs turned away, her boots clicking softly against the deck. The array's not a weapon. It's a warning, and it's yours now, if you want it. Outside, the void stretched endlessly, the stars watching in silence. Thelolan's scanner lay dormant in their palm, its readings still screaming of the impossible. They had come fearing a monster. They had found a teacher instead. Thelolan's fingers trembled as they traced the star map's flickering edges. The dead worlds glowed faintly, their markers pulsing like dying embers. Coombs stood motionless beside them, her silhouette framed by the cold light of the display. There was something deliberate in her stillness, the quiet of a predator or a mourner. Then, without a word, she reached into the console's depths. A holoray recorder slid free, its casing scarred by age and combat. Thelolan recognized the insignia etched into its side, a Terran Peacekeeper sigil, ringed by the jagged script of their war dead. Coombs activated it. The projection bloomed into existence, jagged and grainy, a battlefield captured in fragments. Thelolan's breath caught. The Jovian moon hung in the black, its sulfur plains lit by the corpse, light of a dying fleet. Malthari warships, dozens of them, drifted in broken formations, their crystalline hulls, spider-webbed with fractures. Purple, white energy bled from their wounds, dissipating into the void like mist, and at the center of the slaughter, a single Terran vessel, the Oath of Iron, its name barely legible beneath the carbon scoring that marred its flanks. It shouldn't have been alive. Its armor was peeled open in 3 places, atmosphere still venting in frozen plumes. One of its railgun batteries hung useless, its barrels melted into slag. Yet it moved. The recording shuddered as the Oath banked hard, its remaining thrusters flaring crimson. A Malthari cruiser, fresh unblemished, barreled toward it, its ion lances charging. Thelolan knew this tactic, a clean kill, a merciful one. By Malthari standards, the Terran ship did not evade. Instead, it spun. Thelolan's mind struggled to parse the maneuver. A brutal physics, defying pivot that should have torn the Oath apart. Yet its frame held, and in that impossible moment, its last functional railgun aligned. The shot struck the Malthari cruiser's primary power conduit. The explosion was not the clean rupture of overloading reactors. It was a cascade, a chain reaction as the cruiser's own flowing energy currents rebelled, twisting back through its systems like vipers. The vessel came apart in slow, grotesque increments, its crystalline skin splitting open to reveal the molten ruin within. The recording ended there. Silence pooled in its wake. Coombs finally spoke, her voice softer than Thelolan had ever heard it. That was Captain Tyler Kim's ship. He had orders to retreat. He refused. Thelolan stared at the frozen image. The Oath's shattered hull, the debris field of a fleet that had outnumbered it 50-1. Why? The words slipped out before they could stop it. Coombs exhaled, long and slow. Because the Malthari weren't aiming for him. She tapped the console, and the projection shifted, zooming out to reveal the fragile orbital habitats drifting near iOS Lagrange points. Civilian, undefended, they were his to protect. Thelolan's pulse thundered in their veins. They had studied human warfare, their desperation, their brutality. But this was something else. This was doctrine, not the blind fury of cornered beasts. The calculated wrath of those who had nothing left to Thelolan's. Hands trembled as they retracted the holoprojector, the ghostly afterimage of the Oath sacrifice still burning behind their eyelids. The human's words coiled in their mind like a serpent. They were his to protect. Across the dimly lit command nexus, Malvar stood motionless, his crystalline carapace reflecting the violet pulse of the Malthari ship's energy conduits. His secondary limbs twitched in agitation, betraying the storm beneath his stoic exterior. Thelolan knew that expression. The same one Malvar had worn when they first encountered the wreckage of the Silent Tide, its crew dissolved into slurry by human nanite swarms. "We must report this," Malvar finally said. His voice a low thrum of ion disturbed air. Thelolan's neural tendrils flickered in dissent. Report what? Exactly, that a single human warship held off an entire Malthari battle group, that their peacekeepers are built like siege engines. Malvar's ocular clusters narrowed, that their technology has outpaced our projections. The High Conclave must know. Or, Thelolan countered, this is exactly what they want us to see. A ripple passed through the command, Nexus bioluminescent panels, the ship's organic systems reacting to the tension. Thelolan's gaze flicked to the passive sensor array, still humming softly, its crystalline lattice pulsing in time with the Malthari vessel's own energy flows. Too perfect a synchronization, they had assumed the array was inert, a listening post, nothing more, but humans never deployed just one of anything. Malvar stepped closer, his shadow stretching across the curved aerogel walls. "You think this is deception?" "I think," Thelolan said slowly, "that humans do not waste sacrifices. If they showed us this, it was to make us hesitate." A cold realization slithered through Thelolan's neural network. The array wasn't just observing, it was learning. Every scan, every frequency adjustment. It was mapping their systems, their protocols, the subtle harmonics of Malthari quantum encryption, and it was doing it through their own sensors. Malvar's stance shifted, his primary limbs flexing in the way they did before battle. "Then we destroy it now and confirm their suspicions?" Thelolan countered. "If we attack, we prove we fear what we've seen. We prove they were right to hide this." A flicker of frustration crossed Malvar's face. Thelolan recognized the conflict, the old warrior's instinct to strike warring against the scientist's caution. Outside the viewports, the array's smooth gunmetal surface caught the light of distant stars. It looked harmless. That was the most terrifying part. Thelolan exhaled, their bioluminescent markings dimming. "We need to leave. Quietly. Before it finishes whatever it's doing." Malvar's mandibles tightened. "And if it's already too late?" Thelolan didn't answer. Some truths were too heavy to speak aloud. The Malthari scout vessel Veil of Dawn had already begun its silent retreat, its crystalline hull shimmering with the faintest ripple of evasion protocols. Thelolan monitored the Terran array through the rear sensors, its smooth, unbroken surface still inert, still watching. Then the alarms shrieked. Malvar's command spines flared violet as the tactical display erupted with hostile signatures. 3 Cathari raiders, their jagged hulls pulsing with predatory crimson energy, dropped from stealth just beyond the system's asteroid belt. Thelolan's secondary limbs twitched in reflexive dread. The Cathari were scavengers, opportunists who preyed on lone vessels, and they had clearly been lying in wait for the Veil of Dawn. "Evasive," Malvar barked, his voice cutting through the bridge's sudden chaos. The ship banked hard, its organic thrusters flaring as it twisted away from the first volley of disruptor fire. Thelolan's fingers danced across the console, reinforcing the shields. But they all knew the truth. The Veil of Dawn was a scout, not a warship. Against 3 Cathari raiders, it wouldn't survive. Then the Terran array moved. It was a subtle thing at first, a single panel sliding aside, revealing a recessed emitter. Thelolan's breath caught as the array's surface rippled, like liquid metal disturbed by an unseen current. A low, resonant hum pulsed through the Veil of Dawn sensors, vibrating through the ship's crystalline bones. The Cathari didn't notice. They fired again, their weapons carving searing arcs through the void. The array flickered, a single pulse of silver, blue light lanced outward. Not a weapon, not an attack, but something far stranger. It washed over the Cathari ships like a wave, and for a heartbeat, nothing happened. Then their engines died. Thelolan's tertiary eyes widened. As the raiders' crimson glow winked out, their predatory silhouettes suddenly adrift. Their weapons fell silent, their shields collapsed. Even their internal lights dimmed, leaving them dark and powerless. "What?" Malvar's voice was raw with disbelief. On the comms, a human voice cut through the silence. Colonel Coombs, her tone almost bored. "See, this is why we send one. Any more would be unfair." Thelolan's mind raced. The array hadn't just disabled the Cathari ships. It had unmade their power systems at a fundamental level. No explosion, no debris, just stillness. And then, with a quiet, almost apologetic hum, the array's emitter retracted. Its surface smoothed back into that same unbroken gunmetal sheen as if nothing had happened. Malvar exhaled, his spines trembling. That was not a weapon. Thelolan understood. Weapons destroyed. Weapons left scars. This had been something else entirely. A statement, Section Fey. The hidden codex, Thelolan's claws trembled against the crystalline interface of the scout ship's databanks. The Cathari raiders still drifted in the void beyond the viewport, dark, silent. Their once crimson energy signatures extinguished. The Terran array had done more than disable them. It had rewritten them, and now the Malthari systems were failing. Purple-white streams of diagnostic energy flickered erratically across the console, their usual fluid grace reduced to jagged, broken pulses. Thelolan's secondary eyes narrowed. The data corruption was spreading. ship logs, tactical archives, even the foundational memory cores of their biocrystalline processors. Everything was unraveling. Malvar, Thelolan's voice was tight. We're losing everything. The commander's spines flexed in agitation, his silver-veined carapace reflecting the dying glow of the ship systems. The Terran device did this? No. Thelolan's claws dug deeper into the interface, probing. This is different. The Cathari must have had countermeasures. Some kind of data scourge protocol. Malvar exhaled, his breath stirring the faint ionization mist that clung to the bridge. Then we salvage what we can. Thelolan's tertiary eyes flicked across the console, watching as file after file dissolved into fragmented light. Then, a single entry remained, uncorrupted. Thelolan's breath caught. The file was marked in angular Terran script, its designation stark against the failing systems. Peace through overwhelming restraint. Malvar leaned in, his spine stiffening. Open it. Thelolan obeyed. The words unfolded before them, not as a standard transmission, but as a manifesto, written in the clipped, precise language of Terran military doctrine. It spoke of thresholds, of escalation, of the precise moment when restraint became impossible. And then, the final line, "You'll understand when you're ready." Thelolan's mind reeled. This wasn't just a record, it was a warning. A declaration of intent the humans had known. They had always known. The Cathari had struck first. The Terrans had responded, not with annihilation, but with silence, with stillness, with a weapon that didn't destroy, but taught. Malvar's voice was barely audible. This was never about winning. Thelolan's claws retracted slowly. It was about control. The Terrans had let the Cathari fire, had let them believe, for one fleeting moment, that they had the advantage. The array had spoken. Thelolan's tertiary eyes dimmed. The humans had not just defeated the Cathari, they had humiliated them, stripped them of power, of agency, of even the dignity of a violent end. And now, this file, this single untouched record, was the only thing left. Thelolan exhaled, the weight of understanding settling into his carapace like a physical thing. The humans had not sent one cloak array because they were weak. They had sent one because one was enough, and the galaxy would learn that truth when it was ready. The silence in the Malthari scout vessel was thick enough to suffocate. Thelolan's bioluminescent nodes flickered erratically, casting jagged violet shadows across the crystalline command deck. His claws hovered over the Terran data core, an unassuming black hexagon, its surface smooth as polished obsidian, no insignia, no markings, just a single recessed activation node pulsing with a slow, patient glow. Malvar stood motionless beside him, his silver-carved exoskeleton rigid. The human array had vanished minutes ago, leaving only this. No taunts, no demands, just this. Thelolan's secondary eyes dilated. What are you giving us? Humans. He pressed the node. The core unfolded like a flower blooming in fast. Forward, its edges peeling back in silent, mechanical grace. A holographic sphere erupted from its center. A star map, a timeline. Thelolan's breath caught. Hundreds of them. Thousands. The projection cycled through conflicts with clinical precision, primitive chemical explosions giving way to fission detonations, then fusion firestorms, then singularity collapses that swallowed continents, kinetic bombardments, plasma sieges, nanite swarms, reducing biospheres to gray sludge. Each entry was annotated in crisp, unemotional Terran script, dates, casualty counts, political contexts, and then the aftermaths, rebuilding, memorials, treaties scrawled in blood and compromise. The rise of new powers, the collapse of old ones. The slow, agonizing crawl toward something resembling peace. Thelolan's tertiary eyes dimmed to near black. This wasn't just a record, it was a confession. Malvar's voice was a rasp. They're showing us their scars. The projection shifted, New data streams branched off, older conflicts, pre-spaceflight, trenches and gas attacks, cities reduced to cinders. The same patterns, over and over, the same mistakes, the same pain. A final entry flickered to life. First contact, war Terran designation, the last mistake. Thelolan's claws twitched. He knew this one. Every species in the galactic spiral did. The day the Terrans, fresh from their cradle world, had been fired upon by the Cathari Dominion. The day the Cathari learned, too late, that humanity did not forget. The projection zoomed in. Thelolan expected battle footage, armadas clashing, planets burning. A single image, a Cathari child, its carapace still soft with youth, standing in the ruins of a shattered city. Its limbs were wrapped around a human soldier's waist. The Terran's armor was scorched, his rifle slung across his back. One gauntleted hand rested on the child's head, not striking, not seizing, protecting. The caption beneath read, "Ceasefire. Day Fey. Sector Gamma. Fey Note. First recorded instance of cross. Species adoption post-conflict." Thelolan's neural tendrils coiled tight. This was the heart of it. The Terrans weren't just showing their violence. They were showing their regret, their growth. Malvar exhaled sharply. "They're telling us they've been where we are." The projection faded. The core resealed itself with a soft click. For a long moment, neither Malthari moved. Thelolan's console chimed. A systems update. He accessed it, and froze. The Terran array hadn't just left them a file. It had upgraded their ship. New protocols hummed in the navigation matrix. Shield algorithms refined to Fey efficiency. Engine output calibrated with precision no Malthari engineer could replicate. Even the bioscanners now displayed Terran medical schematics alongside Malthari physiology. Malvar's spines flared. They helped us. Thelolan closed his primary eyes. Of course they had. That was the true lesson. The Terrans didn't need to crush them. They'd already walked this path, stumbled, fallen, gotten back up. They were offering a hand. Thelolan picked up the core. It was warm. "Study this," he murmured, echoing the unspoken message. Or don't outside the viewport. The stars burned cold and distant. The humans would be waiting. Section Fey, debriefing in shadows. The Malthari scout vessel Whisper of Dawn slid into the docking cradle of High Command Station with none of the fanfare its revelations deserved. Thelolan watched through the viewport as the station's crystalline spires loomed. Sleek, curved structures glowing with the faint aurora of atmospheric condensers. Their surfaces alive with rippling purple-white energy currents. It was a place of order, of certainty, and what they carried would shatter both. Malvar stood rigid beside him, his silver-carved spines twitching in a nervous rhythm no Malthari of his rank should ever display. Thelolan understood. His own secondary eyelids flickered, struggling to process the weight of what they'd witnessed. The Terran array, the upgrades humming in their ship's veins. The implications, the docking clamps engaged with a resonant thrum, and the airlock hissed open. High Command's war chamber was a cavernous space of flowing aerogel architecture, its walls embedded with luminescent data streams that pulsed like slow breaths. Thelolan counted 17 senior officers arrayed around the central holodisplay, their violet and silver carapaces reflecting the cold glow of tactical projections. At the head stood Fleet Admiral Vathis, her age-worn crest marked by the jagged scar of an old plasma burn. Malvar stepped forward, mandibles clicking in formal salute. "Admiral, the Terran border reconnaissance was a routine patrol." Vathis interrupted, her voice like wind over glass. "Until you abandoned protocol to chase shadows." A ripple of disapproval ran through the assembled officers. Thelolan felt the weight of their stares. Reckless, unstable, compromised. He activated his datapad with respect. "Admiral," the shadows answered. The holodisplay flickered to life, projecting the sensor logs. The Terran array's emergence, the impossible maneuvers, the moment their own systems had been altered by foreign code. Then laughter. A malfunction, scoffed Tactical Overseer Keller, his bioluminescent markings flaring in derision, or Terran propaganda. Their cloak arrays are fairy tales. Thelolan didn't blink. Run a diagnostic on Whisper of Dawn's shield efficiency, or its engine output, or it's enough. Vathis raised a clawed hand. The chamber stilled, dismissed. Malvar's spines flared in protest. But Thelolan gripped his arm. Not here. They withdrew, the whispers of the officers curling behind them like smoke. Thelolan expected the summons. He found Vathis alone in her private observatory, the curved transparency of the dome revealing the sprawl of the Malthari homeworld below, its storm-wreathed continents bathed in pale violet twilight. She didn't turn as he entered. "You fought beside them," she said quietly. During the Urdak suppression, Thelolan froze. That conflict was buried deep in classified archives, a brutal campaign where Malthari forces had been trapped behind enemy lines. Officially, Dead fought their way out through sheer discipline. Unofficially, the Terrans came. Vathis continued, claws tracing the scar on her crest. One of their ships, a frigate by their standards, it broke the Urdak siege in 12 minutes. Her voice dropped to a whisper. They called it mercy. Thelolan exhaled. So she knew. Vathis turned, her primary eyes reflecting the stars. "Show me the core." He placed the Terran device on the observation console. It pulsed once softly, as if greeting her. For the first time in decades, the old admiral looked afraid. "They could have erased us," she murmured. "Instead, they gave us this." Thelolan nodded. Outside, the first of Malthar's twin moons rose, its light catching the aurora swirling in the upper atmosphere. Somewhere beyond that sky, the Terrans were waiting, not as conquerors, as teachers. Vathis straightened, her spine settling into resolve. "Prepare a full report for my eyes." Only Thelolan bowed. He knew what would come next. The galaxy was about to learn why Terrans didn't need to hide, and why those who'd seen them truly understood they never had. Section Fae. The next array. Thelolan stood at the edge of the observation spire, her bioluminescent veins pulsing faintly in the dim light of the Malthari war chamber. Years had passed since the Urdak siege, since the Terran device had hummed its quiet, terrifying song across the void. The scars of that battle still marked the galaxy, not in ruined hulls or scorched planets, but in the way the younger species now whispered the word, human, like a prayer. The chamber around her was alive with the soft glow of Malthari technology, streaming currents of purple, white energy winding through translucent control panels, the air humming with the resonance of atmospheric condensers. The war table before her displayed a holographic star map, its edges flickering with the aurora, like signatures of distant systems. And there, blinking softly near the contested Kethvar expanse, another Terran array. Thelolan's secondary eyelids flickered. She had spent decades studying the first device, peeling back its secrets layer by agonizing layer. It had not been a weapon, not truly. It had been a lesson, a demonstration of restraint, so precise it bordered on cruelty. The Terrans had not needed to obliterate the Urdak fleet. They had only needed to show they could. And now, another array, her claws traced the hologram's edge, the projection rippling at her touch. The Kethvar expanse was warlord territory, a nest of raiders and slavers who had long evaded Malthari justice. The kind of vermin the old council would have ignored, deeming them too insignificant to waste warships on. But the Terrans had never thought that way. A chime sounded behind her. Malvar entered, his once vibrant silver carapace, now dulled with age, his spines bearing the faint scars of 100 battles. He did not speak. He did not need to. Thelolan had known he would come. Together, they studied the hologram. The array pulsed gently, a single point of light in the dark. Malvar exhaled, the sound like wind through ancient crystal. They are watching. Thelolan's mandibles twitched in what might have been a smile. No, they are waiting. She reached for the comm panel, her claws hovering over the transmission interface. The galaxy had changed since Urdak. The Malthari had changed, no longer the hesitant arbiters of a stagnant order. They had learned slowly, painfully, what it meant to wield power without flinching. The Terrans had taught them that. Her claw tapped the console. A single word, encoded in tight beam, streaked toward the array. Beyond the observation spire, the first streaks of dawn light caught the atmospheric condensers, scattering prismatic shards across the chamber. Somewhere out there, in the void between stars, the Terrans would hear, and the galaxy would remember, Mercy had claws. The observation spire hummed with the low thrum of atmospheric condensers, their crystalline surfaces catching the first light of dawn. Malvar watched the auroras ripple across the sky, their violet hues bleeding into the pale silver of the Malthari homeworld's ionosphere. The sight should have been soothing. Instead, it reminded him of fire. Fire in the day, the Terrans taught the galaxy the meaning of asymmetry. Thelolan's voice cut through his thoughts, her tone measured but edged with something darker. You were at I.O. It wasn't a question. Malvar's secondary eyelids flicked shut for a heartbeat, the memory rising unbidden. The Malthari had been so certain back then. Their fleet had outnumbered the Terrans 5-1, their ships sleek and radiant with the flowing silver, purple of their organic technology. The humans, by contrast, had been a rabble, patched together hulls, jury-rigged weapons, their vessels scarred from 100 desperate battles. A rabble that had won. We thought we understood war, Malvar murmured, his voice like wind over fractured glass. We had studied their history, their world wars, their nuclear brinksmanship. We assumed their tactics would be crude, linear, a holographic projection flickered to life between them, summoned by Thelolan's subtle gesture. The Battle of I.O. unfolded in miniature, the Malthari armada arrayed in perfect formation, their energy signatures a luminous web of violet and white, and against them, a single Terran cruiser. Indomitable Thelolan's mandibles twitched. One ship. Malvar exhaled. One ship. The humans had not met the Malthari in open battle. They had lured them. The cruiser had danced just beyond weapons range, its engines flaring erratically as if damaged. The Malthari had taken the bait, surging forward in a flawless envelopment maneuver. And then the space around Io erupted. The hologram flared as hidden mines detonated. Not explosives, but gravity distortions, ripping through the Malthari formation like claws through silk. The Terrans had seeded the battlefield days in advance, turning the very void into a weapon. Malvar's claws flexed involuntarily. They didn't just anticipate our tactics. They weaponized our assumptions. Thelolan's bioluminescent markings pulsed in agitation. And then the cruiser turned. The Indomitable had pivoted, its battered hull suddenly alive with energy signatures the Malthari scanners couldn't classify. Not plasma, not kinetics. Something worse. The hologram shuddered as the Terran ship unleashed its payload, a storm of relativistic slugs, each one a sliver of tungsten accelerated to a fraction of light speed. The Malthari shields, designed to diffuse energy weapons, shattered like glass. Hulls that had weathered supernovae crumpled. And then the Terrans did something the Malthari still did not speak of in open council. They boarded. Malvar's voice dropped to a whisper. Their soldiers wore no armor, just environment suits and harnesses, packed with crude explosives. They moved in silence, no comms, no coordination we could intercept. Thelolan's frills flattened, suicide troops. No, Malvar's gaze locked onto hers. Adaptable troops, the humans had not died willingly. They had died precisely. Each blast calculated to cripple a reactor, rupture a conduit, collapse a crystalline support matrix. By the time the Malthari realized what was happening, 3 flagships were venting atmosphere. The hologram dimmed, the battle dissolving into static. Thelolan was silent for a long moment. And the lesson? Malvar turned back to the dawn, his reflection fractured in the spire's crystalline panels. The Terrans do not fight to destroy. They fight to teach. Beyond the glass, the first rays of sunlight ignited the condensers, setting the sky ablaze with prismatic fire. Just like Io, the dawn's auroras bled across the sky, their shifting hues reflecting off the shattered remnants of the Malthari fleet still drifting in low orbit. Thelolan watched them through the spire's crystalline panels, the wreckage glowing like embers in the solar wind. It was beautiful. In a way, the way a predator's bones might gleam under moonlight, a testament to something greater than death. Malvar stood beside her, his carapace still humming faintly with the residual energy of the hologram's playback. The battle had been decades ago, but the weight of it pressed against them both, heavy as a dying star. They fight to teach. The words coiled in Thelolan's mind, venomous and undeniable. She had spent cycles studying human technology, their tactics, their psychology. She had thought she understood them, their blunt aggression, their reckless ingenuity. But this was something else. A flicker of movement caught her eye. On the observation deck below, Colonel Janet Coombs stood with her back to them, arms crossed as she surveyed the wreckage. Even in stillness, the human exuded a quiet lethality, like a blade balanced on its edge. Beside her, Captain Tyler Kim was bent over a data slate, fingers dancing across the display with the precision of a surgeon. Thelolan's frills twitched. They do not waste motion. Not even in peace. Malvar followed her gaze. You see it now, he murmured. The humans had not simply won the battle over Io. They had orchestrated it. Every death, every explosion, every ruptured conduit, each had been a brushstroke in a masterpiece of annihilation. The Malthari had fought with elegance, their crystalline warships weaving through space like dancers, their energy lances cutting precise, calculated arcs. The humans had fought like a storm, and storms did not care about elegance. Thelolan's claws flexed against the railing. Their cloak array, she said slowly. It was never meant to hide them. Malvar's mandibles clicked in grim amusement. No, it was a distraction so the Malthari would focus on the wrong threat. So they would pour their efforts into tracking a single impossible vessel, while the real danger slipped through their defenses. Human boarding pods, unshielded, unarmed, packed with soldiers who had no intention of returning. Thelolan's breath hissed through her vents. Adaptable troops, not suicide soldiers, sacrifice soldiers beyond the glass. The wreckage of the Malthari flagship Eclipse of Dawn tumbled end over end, its once gleaming hull blackened and broken. The humans had not just defeated it, they had dismantled it. And in doing so, they had taught the galaxy a lesson. Thelolan turned away from the view, her mind racing. If this was how humans waged war when they were losing, what would they do when they truly decided to win? Malvar's voice was soft, almost reverent. Now you understand why we fear them. And worse, she understood why. Despite everything, she respected them.